Hi, I'm Spencer Krause. I've been building robots for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of interesting things, and I've heard a lot of interesting stories. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is a place where my colleagues and I can relax, crack a drink, and talk about some of the crazier things we've seen at work and some of the experiences we've had that have gotten us to where we are today. Subscribe today to join the collaboration. Welcome to the Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Krause. Our guest today is Felipe Oliveira. Felipe is the president and CEO of Orion Inspection Services. Felipe, welcome to the pod.
Hello, Spencer. Many thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. It was a pleasure just touring Orion's headquarters in Rio about a couple of months ago now. And I'm excited to at least virtually show you what we've got going on in the podcast studio here.
Yeah, time flies by. It looks like yesterday here.
Yeah, no, it was a really good hang. I enjoyed getting to know you. I'm excited to find more ways to do business together. And I don't know, Rio is lovely in general. I guess I'm pretty jealous that you get to live there. So it's also wonderful what you've built up with Orion.
That's great. It's on the fly, learning how to navigate this market here. As I told you there back then, I'm still learning to be an entrepreneur and give the step back from being just the engineering on the R&D parts. But it still gets some niches here for people who are always in the R&D. You want to be there developing, but unfortunately we cannot. But it was a pleasure to have you there. And thankfully everything's going through with Orion.
Absolutely. Now, so you mentioned you got your start in R&D. How did you end up deciding to start Orion? Like, what was your story there?
So it's kind of a backward story. So I've been working for R&D for all my life since I was 17. I started as a trainee in Petrobras Research Center, developing by the time inspection pigs for pipeline inspection. And then I moved on for university, working alongside with Petrobras. And a few years later, I left the university to work on a company for building the Brazilian market for a kind of solution that I validated back in the university where I used to work. But then pandemic hits, so everyone had some kind of story during pandemic, and mine was the company I used to work for shut down the engineering sector, which I used to handle to spearhead. And by the time I was going to tell my former partners from other countries that I was leaving, so I had some partner companies that worked with me there. And a few of them told me, "Oh, look, if you are leaving, you are going to leave a few here," because I was the connection between them and the end clients here. So I founded Orion out of, let's say, necessity, to be say like that, without any major knowledge. And thankfully it's going through. But by the time it was just me, a dream, and a small office there, just myself. But
no,
thankfully it's going through okay.
That's kind of similar to how I started SKA out of my own apartment back in the day. But
yeah, that's it. So no big plans. It was not something that was not a planned baby there, but still very loved and very taken care of for all the time there.
But it seems like it's growing well. I mean, you guys had an impressive operation. The office was awesome. I mean, you've negotiated international strategic partnerships. It's been growing in a really beautiful way.
It's growing very fast. Right now, I'm actually holding up a bit of the growth to structure things out so it can grow on an organized manner. Because as we know, and probably all the listeners here know, many of the most difficult part is not just handle the product parts or the product, but we also have behind that your administrative teams deal with the clients, we finance, and those are the key points that are based for our business there, which I have no support on that. So I have a partner that handles most of these parts for me in the company, but I still need to know how to navigate. So now we are on the step that we are trying to establish process to grow on a steady manner and with some backup there. So if someone leaves, some of the collaborators leave at some point, we have the process mapped out, so we can follow that up again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's lovely. I mean, just to have good partners, I feel like is such a thing of beauty. I
Mhm.
started SKA just kind of without any, and we've been bringing in really sharp people like our CFO, and just hired a head of engineering, and we've got a few other folks that are just filling out the team really nicely, and allowing everyone to specialize in their own way. It sounds like you're doing the same thing.
Pretty, pretty much that. So I have some good people, some key personnel there, which they are. I try to all the time to make them part of the company. They are part of the company. There is no Orion without some of the actually all the members there. Of
Yeah,
course,
for
some
sure.
more, others they be dead. But
It's not the
we
truth.
try to make people have to make that to make them feel at home there, make them feel as a part of the company there, and actually trust them with that niche of work. So by the end of the day, we cannot try to hug the world that sometime. We cannot carry all of us of ourselves. And let the experts do what they're best at that. And trust that things, their feedback on that.
For sure. Well, I mean, how do you find that balance of like how much do you trust versus intervene? Because I feel like it's not always an easy thing to do as a business owner.
No, it's not at all. I tend to be put a lot of trust in people. So that's something that I do. And I put a lot of trust in the people judgment by the end of the day. So I say, okay, what's the time you need to do that? What kind of resource you need? And they gave me a number. I trust that number, and that's something that always sets me back or impacts me a lot. Is when people say that they can deliver something by that time, they can't, and that's okay. It happened with me, with everyone. But the problem is when they don't give you the feedback and don't give you the warning, let's say that the heads up, and they come to the deadline because you also have the deadlines of our own. And you, by the end of the day, you and me, we are the major customers, the major stakeholders of the company. So we depend on pretty much everyone around us work to do ours. And that's the hardest part for me.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. No, I mean, if somebody doesn't meet their deadline to you and you've got a deadline externally, it's ultimately, your problem and your fault. So at least
No,
that's what I found in my position.
but I don't mind with that as long as I'm told in advance. So if people come to me like 1 week, 5 days, depends on the task. It changes a lot. The spread, this timetable there. But just came to the day of the deadline and say, look, I didn't do, and that breaks everything
Yeah.
because we are not machines. None of us, none of the employees. So every time something comes up and we might struggle, we might lose time. That happens with everyone. You just need to be honest and tell in advance. That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay. And
So
how do you do that? This balance on your company?
it's not always easy, right? So like you, I try to trust people, and for the most part, it works out. I mean, most people I think are good and professional, and we try to hire the right people, and we tend to get rid of people pretty quickly when they don't, pull their weight and do what they say they're gonna do. But I mean, every now and then, to your point, I mean, just life happens, and there's extenuating circumstance, or, I mean, research and development is really hard, as you know, and
Yeah.
there's always things that you don't necessarily foresee. But I think to your point, I mean, just knowing that, customers can handle bad news, they just can't handle it at the last minute. As long as
Yes.
you're working with people who also understand that, and you're their customer,
Exactly.
then, I think things go pretty well. And I've found that even with, on the customer side, like our customers appreciate just open communication and transparency. So
Exactly.
if we keep them in the loop,
Trans-
if something's not going well, say we get like a batch of parts that doesn't meet, QA from our shop, and we say, hey, looks like we got these parts. There's some machining errors. It may add a few extra days to the timeline to have them remachined.
That's it.
We could also reorder from a rush shop. I mean, there's a few options. What do you want us to do here? And they'll say, like, oh yeah, thank you for telling me. Here's what I think. Or like other
That's the point.
customers.
Just play.
So I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. So just saying that that's the point. Just be fair. Just be open. Be honest there. And people appreciate that most of the time, even if that impacts them. But the fact that you trust on their partnership and on their behavior, their understanding of that situation there, makes them feel welcome. They feel like a partner on the project there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it comes down to that is just good communication, right? I mean, I think that's the core of a lot of relationships. And I mean,
Exactly.
obviously, if somebody's chronically late with things, at the end of the day, like, you have to take remedial action, either working with them to help them overcome the issue. I found with some of our technicians in particular, like they're maybe not the best all the time with using like a calendar app like Google Calendar, and so there's a lecture that I've given a few times now to different people, and it's usually if somebody misses a meeting, I'll say, hey, what happened there, and they'll say, well, I just forgot, and I'll say, well, here's how I never forget. So I'll say, look, I
Yeah,
used to miss a lot of meetings when I was in college, and these days before I go to sleep every night, I look at my calendar, and if I can't make something, like I let the person know, and if I can make it, I set an alarm that gives me enough time to get there in order to be there on time. And so, that's
yeah, but truth be told, that's something that you only learn when you're going for a more management area of the company there. When you are more technical, you tend not to, because you don't have that much appointments or so much different appointments. Uh, you, me, and probably every entrepreneur there, you have to jump from a meeting with one client, then to finance, then with your travel agent. In freeing, I'm talking about a span of 2 hours that. And if you don't do like you said, check your day activity. So you need to do that either on the day before, either very early on the first day, but you need to check that. But for the operational part, the experts, let's call them the experts, so the R&D and the engineer, the development engineer, usually they have like one meeting a week, 5 meetings a week, let's say tops. That's a dream, I know that, but I wish I could go back to that.
yeah. Honestly, I kind of like this way right now. I'm enjoying just being in a lot of meetings. I think sometimes it's rough, but other times, I mean, like I have 2 more after this podcast, and we're recording in the evening. But
Okay.
it's okay, right? I mean, they're important meetings and they need to be had. So it's all part of getting the job done.
Yeah. The main problem for me is when shifting too fast between a meeting to another. And unfortunately, on some, it's difficult, especially with clients, to stay with the agenda. If you don't have a full agenda for the meetings tend to slip up a bit. Then the 2 minutes that you are late for the second meeting, you might miss, for example, the time you have to prepare yourself for even to your brain to shift from one topic to the other. It's not all the time, but at least for me, it happens sometime.
No, same
And they
here.
do like
I've
to
actually had it happen today. And
prepare.
remember, I was 4 minutes late for a meeting, and when I came in, I was totally unprepared, and it took me maybe a minute to just get my
That's
notes,
it.
and I had to
And that's it's
apologize.
exactly. And that's depending on who you're meeting to. If it's, for example, the first meeting with the clients, people say that no, but by the end of the day, first impressions matter all the time. And you need to be ready to do that. So you need to be prepared. One thing that I do, you said about your method, the one thing that I do is to have at least a 5 minute break between each meeting so I can read my notes. And I always put some notes at minimum. Look, this person here works at that company. I met him at this place and he's interested on that topic. That's the minimum. But
Yeah,
that helps you trigger that.
I
Okay.
like that a lot, actually. What I've noticed, there's a very large U.S. based defense company that we're talking to right now, and those guys, their calendar is set up by default to start every meeting 5 minutes past the half
Oh,
hour mark, and I actually really like it. But
that's
what I
that's
found,
something.
sorry, after you.
No. Go ahead. I like the idea.
I like the idea too, but what I found is I'll set my alarms like now instead of setting it 5 minutes before, I'll set it like right at the top of the hour. And I'll still get there, but I'm just like, oh, okay, well I can work with this. So,
Okay.
but I do need to get better about making that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like I sort of make it at the end of a meeting. I'll set an alarm and it'll go off, and some people have given me grief for this because it's there's a sales guy that used to work for us that doesn't anymore that was like, why do you always have alarms going off at the end of meetings? I'm like, well, I don't want to miss the next meeting, so
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing that. So,
No, but that's your system. By the end of the day, you need to have one, and it's better for you to be honest, as you said, and have a fixed time. If you haven't finished the topic, just say to them, either to the client, to the stakeholder, to the supplier, look, have another meeting now here. Can you go back? Because the alternative of that is you trying to even unconsciously, trying to push them to finish the meeting or pushing yourself to finish the meeting there, and you rush the topic by the end of the day. It's
Yeah.
better to be honest and revisit that if the case be.
No, I agree. And I mean, in my experience, it takes 5 minutes to schedule the next meeting. So if at like 10 minutes to the
Yeah.
mark, you say, hey, look, we're coming up at the end. I think we have more to discuss than the amount of time we have. I have to make it to another meeting. Do you want to schedule another meeting so we can close this out? I feel like people tend to respect that.
Exactly. And it's easier for both for us, the meeting owners and the host, meeting hosts, and also for the other end as well. Just be honest that help us to wrap up our thoughts on that and make some closure. Not all
sure.
meetings end in the closure.
Well, and sometimes to your point, I mean, if you try to push to schedule more time, somebody doesn't want more meetings, so they'll give you closure, and you can kind of get it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, actually, no, I know right now it's this, this, and this. Here's the price. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, okay, easy enough. Yeah, here's my thoughts. So.
That's it. Well, that's the case here. That's something that, for me at least, ties me a lot to go for a lot of meetings here. But it's part of the job there. And I have, and not difficult, but I used to have a hard time fluctuating between internal affairs of the company, so production, finance, R&D, mechanical part, electrical part, and also look at when I go to the R&D part, to the project part. That's where I shine. That's what I've been all my life. What I like to do, but I had to sometimes keep preparing myself for the finance part that I don't like. It's part of the job.
No, for sure, and it's all important. I'm still, like, I would say probably the finance is my least skilled part of the job. I'm grateful to have good financial advisors and like a strong chief financial officer. But I would say for me, my favorite part is probably just interacting with people, the sales, the team development. Like lately, I've directed that more towards sales and like external. But I don't know. I mean, I came from R&D. My whole career was engineering, and so it took kind of a refocusing and just a reprioritization for me to realize like the best thing I can do for my business is to get really good at sales. And so it was sort of a reinvention.
That's what I've gone through as well. But that's something that I like to say to people. There is not necessarily what you like to do. It's what you are best at doing. So I like to say that I had an uncle. He's already passed away, unfortunately, but he used to love to cook, but man, he couldn't cook. But he couldn't do that. His coffee was horrible. His cookies were horrible, but he loved it. That was what made him happy there. Okay. And for example, I like being on R&D, but that doesn't mean that being on R&D is what I'm best there doing the projects, especially when you're going what's best for the company to grow, as you said.
For sure.
Exactly. So,
well, that's it. I mean, if you stay at your lab all day, like the company doesn't grow because you can only do so much as one individual contributor. If you're in a position of influence and you're talking to customers, you're talking to the team, you're making sure that other people are pointed in the right direction, you're making sure you have the right hires, you're firing the people that shouldn't be working for you, you're doing the important, strategic level work. I mean, that's where you have the greatest impact. And so, I think that's just unfortunately what it has to be if you want to grow your business. This episode of Collaborative with Spencer Krause is brought to you by Rockwell Park. If you're building something in tech, robotics, AI, or even advanced manufacturing, Rockwell Park is already home to companies just like yours. Located right here in the historic East End of Pittsburgh, Rockwell Park has spaces starting at 1,000 square feet all the way up to over 100,000 square feet. So if you're an early-stage startup or even a Fortune 500 company, here you can scale without limits. Look, we built this studio in Rockwell Park. We love working with these guys. You should check them out. If you're interested, go to rockwellpark.com. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com.
Yeah, what's your best feature for your company? For example, I'll tell mine here. I'm good at dealing with crises. So something goes wrong, everyone starts losing their minds there. They don't know what to do. And although I'm feeling with a thing like that for inside here, I can hold my own and make people calm. around me. And that I see that I've always seen that. My family also told me I was like that, and that's something I brought up for the company.
I love
For
that.
something goes wrong on the day to day, I'm still feeling nervous. I have of that, but I can internalize that. Look calm, so I can make other people calm around me, and put some rational thoughts if in the big mass environment like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a superpower. Um,
Mhm.
for me, I think there's some of that, but I mean, again, I think what I want to go back to again is maybe this is a new one for me. Like this is one I've been cultivating over the last year and a half, but the ability to really, talk to customers and understand like a business case and take myself out of, well, yes, I know you want to spend money on R&D, but is this R&D actually going to yield your company a return? And so like getting that dialogue going, and even if it doesn't immediately benefit me, and just say, hey, well, does it make sense to do a robotics project here, and why, and what's the purpose of the robot, and how is it going to return value? Does it actually increase safety, or are we just making the robot for the sake of making a robot? In which case, why don't we just not make the robot? And so, I think that was counterintuitive for me because there was a point earlier in my career where I really just, I mean, there's been different parts. Like obviously, like you want to get the job, whatever, you're like, oh, a job, but then it's not the right job, and like it's not going to lead to a longer term program, and you only have so much time. So I think filtering for like what is a good use of all of our time and resources is something I've become very good at, is just kind of
That's nice.
moving into like that counselor kind of advisor role.
That's great. Another thing I noticed that from you is that for the same solution, same products, you might be able to give different approaches or different benefits depending on the audience of the public we're seeing. So let's say you are making robots that for some people, the best benefit might be the productivity to have, but depending on the audition, the public you are talking to about that, safety might come first. And looks like you're the one that can navigate through these benefits pretty well on what each can do there.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's also important to understand, like you said, like, what are the priorities? Is it safety? Is it, making money? Is it saving money? Is it publicity and you just want to be seen to have robots in a certain context? Is it that there's a task that just wouldn't be possible without a specialized tool? In which case, that's kind of a different, reason to do the project, but also a good one.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
I don't know. Or is there just no reason? In which case, like, let's figure that out, because if we can detect that this is a dead end, or, so I'm sure you deal with this too. Like sometimes you'll have a customer approach you, and I say a customer, like a prospective customer approach, and they maybe just read an article about, something. I don't know what it is, like with the latest buzzword, like, maybe it's agentic AI, or it's, they heard about reinforcement learning on robot arms. So they want reinforcement learning on their robot arm. But I'm like, why do you want reinforcement learning? We just want reinforcement learning. It's okay, but like that's all well and good. We have some of the world's experts in reinforcement learning. I'm happy to go that direction. But, what you're asking for is the same motion path over and over and over again. Like, are you sure that's what you want? Yes, I want okay. This is maybe an unsophisticated ask. So, you have to be tactful in those situations, but also, I think there's nothing wrong with just telling people like, hey, like just politely, like, here's kind of my thoughts on this. Here's my thoughts on that. What do you think of this? And, let's work together to, kind of find the best business case so that we all win.
Exactly. And I see that several times, if not most of the time. People, specifically, not everyone is an expert or within the niche as you are and me and myself are, but they have an idea, but they don't know how the best practice or they even the consequences and side effects of that idea that they have. And you, me, and everyone in need, so if our expertise that we might foresee that insight, but sometimes it's hard to show them that this might happen. And look, it's not something that I'm talking just for an idea. I'm talking with experience background here that has happened some points, but even so, I struggle sometimes. I'm sure you go through that as well to show. By the end, if the end client or the stakeholder or the project manager, they want to go like this, we give them advice. Look, this might happen. Are you sure they want to go? Well, let's go. Let's go through with that. But is
And then when it
is
happens, you just have to keep a cool head.
you cannot tell I told you so. I'll do as much as you'd like to. There.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can never say that. You have to say, okay, well, it looks like we lost the robot.
Yeah.
Here are our options moving forward.
Exactly. That show the what could be not what could be done, but what you can do to not for that not happen again. Because I say all the time here is a common thing to say in Portuguese that the could most of the time would not leave you anywhere. When you say you can, either you did or you're going to do. But what you could have done is something that just going to cause you some anguish inside there.
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, and then I also think there's, the what are you going to do now? There's yes, how do we prevent this from ever happening again? But also now that this has happened, what are our next steps? Because, this Earth is still rotating and tomorrow is another day. So how are we going to handle that?
Exactly. Just move forward with that, learn with the mistakes, with the problems that happen, or if not even the foreseen and the unforeseen mistakes, because sometimes things happen that no one saw it coming. But you need just to learn and move forward, adapt that to the next plans, learn from it and move forward.
Also just finding good people in the first case that are worthy of trust. I think that knowing a little bit, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
Because the world is full of people that, just don't know what they're doing, that will try to, take advantage of you. And so I remember to get to our current financial team, maybe I shouldn't be admitting this, but I probably fired, at least a dozen people that didn't work out. And finally I found some really good folks and, that have just been doing good work consistently. And I'm so grateful to have them on the team. And it took a long time to get to that point, I think my one advisor says fast to hire, fast to fire. And so.
Okay. No, I don't go to that road, okay? But I go to another one, which has its downsides as well. So I have a mix of people in the company there. So I try to mix very junior people. So I'm inside of the university as visitors there. So I get a lot of people that are still in the university, still undergrads, and they become grads within the company.
Oh,
so
cool.
now I have let's say conversion rates of 65, 6% of the people stays with us. So that's the goal. So everyone stays with us. However, I also have at least 3 or 4 very senior personnel that work with me. And usually are people that are even way less educated, so didn't go to a formal education, but they have 6 years, 65 years of experience in life. And then they can teach the other people how to deal with some situations. I give an example a lot for people coming from the university. I like to say to them that they know if you gave them an orange, they know how to calculate all the area, all the volume of the orange in 5 seconds. But if you gave them a knife and try peel the orange now, they will struggle with that. And that's where the 65-year-old guy comes to teach them how to be more straight to the point there. That balance is working fine for us. Okay.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll say personally, I tend to value life experience over education, 9 times out of 10. And there's people that have both, right? I've got a master's degree, which I'm sure somebody with a PhD will scoff at me for that. But in any event,
Yeah.
It's...
Don't throw up with us.
Yeah, exactly. But, I've also hired plenty of people that don't have a college degree at all because they're experienced and they're responsible and they're intelligent and they're reliable. And so, I just gave somebody a job yesterday where I hired them. Actually, I had 2 of my trusted colleagues interview them first. And then I heard a really good report. It was the top candidate for this job. And so then I talked to them earlier in the day. We had a really good interview. They had, the right kind of enthusiasm and knowledge, and they just answered every question right. I said, I just had a dinner cancellation. You want to get dinner? We'll talk about it more. And I printed off an offer letter. I stuck it in my lapel pocket in my blazer. I didn't tell them it was there. And we did the whole dinner, and it went well. And we talked a lot about just getting to know each other as people. We had a few drinks together, which I feel like is a good way to kind of see what's in someone's heart. And at the end, I said, "Hey, when can you start?" I handed her the job offer letter, and she's like, "Oh wow, absolutely, I'm very interested." So it's kind of fun, bit of showmanship.
Yep. But that's the thing. By the end of the day, balance is the thing. Education, you have going for, as I said, a PhD, a master's degree, a doctorate. They have the kind of knowledge that no one has.
Yeah.
But I found that most of the time it's this kind of people who just go to the academics, they don't have the
experience,
the life experience. Yes.
Well, that was it. So this person did not have a college degree, and they were very apologetic about it. They were like, I didn't finish college. And I said, hey, some of the best people on our team didn't finish college. We've got this person in contracts that didn't. We've got this engineer over here, that is self-taught, that does amazing work. We've got this other technician that's awesome. I mean, it's just, are you good at your job? And do you care? And do you have a healthy attitude for self-growth? And if you got all that stuff, then you're fine.
And by the end of the day is get the job done.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Yeah, you can't be incompetent and not have an education, but you can't be incompetent and have an education either. I think the education is like, it helps, but it's not really. Once you're maybe 5 years into your career, it becomes irrelevant.
Yep, that's what I found as well here. Okay, it's a must, especially in our area. We need to have that, specifically to try to keep up with the developments that we see in the world most of the time. But that needs to be applied. And to be applied, you cannot be just learning all the time. You need to be executing, trying, making errors.
Yeah.
Learning from that.
So obviously we've both traveled a lot, and I mean, both of us are workaholics. So what do you think of some of the different international business cultures, like the way business is done in like the United States versus Brazil versus Britain versus China, which I haven't actually had the pleasure of doing business. And we do business with Chinese vendors, but I've not been there yet. I'm working on my visa right now. Like, what are some of the nuances you've noticed in different kind of cultures?
That's actually, for me, that's the most difficult thing to navigate through, because some things that are normal for us, it's not normal for everyone there. So an example here, in US, people, in America, people tend to be very direct with that. And if they like your company products, you don't lose a lot of time, for example, in procurement on that. It's a big part of business there, but you don't take too much time on that. When you usually go to countries like Brazil, Argentina, and most of the countries in Africa I've visited too, then the procurement, the registration of the company, that tends to take a lot of time, and it's those things that sometimes here. I understand that it protects both the customer, the end client, and us are being hired. That, however, it might but set you back to attend the client as fast as you could, or solving a solution as fast as that could. And that's just an example of that.
That's interesting. So I've seen in the U.S. for some companies it can take months. Like, when you say it takes a long time, do you mean longer than that? Like,
I'll tell you that I've had companies here with some oil companies that working in Brazil, that I started my conversations in 2024, and I still don't have the contract.
Oh, wow.
But I have this, or some that I haven't done. For example, I have done the job. Let's say the same job I can do for a private mining company. I'll give an example here for pipeline inspection. All the process going through they reaching out to me, we developing the solution, going through the technical parts, then the commercial parts. That would take, like, on a rush, 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks. And then you can get the job done in like 3 days, 4 days. It's something job. And I had other companies that for the exactly same scope, these procurements, commercial parts takes like 6 months, 7 months. And the execution part from 3 days might take you 3 months.
That's brutal. Easily. Well, and honestly, we've been there too. I mean, there was one of our customers where we had to do this ridiculous, I shouldn't say this, but I thought a ridiculous cybersecurity audit. And it was, I mean, we got through it, but at the end of the day, they were asking questions that were not in any way relevant to the work we were doing. And
exactly.
So, It's like, hey guys, like, I understand that you want to make sure everybody's safe, but like, how is this relevant to the work that we're doing here? And they said, well, we just need to know the answers. We're bureaucrats. So,
Ex- that's
we're also,
that's a role.
all
I was
right.
trying to avoid that, but
But
that's
like,
it.
it's fun because then you build your team up, and like, I mean, Orion has bureaucrats too now. SKA Robotics has bureaucrats. So we're like, we've
Yeah,
got people that know how to handle bureaucrats like on staff. And at first, I think as somebody that starts as an engineer, and I don't know if you had the same reaction, I was angry when I found out that people wanted all this extra stuff in order to just be able to do the work, which was, like you said, it's maybe 3 days of work, but then 3 months of onboarding. And it's like, why do we have to do this? It doesn't make any sense. But then you realize quickly, it's like, okay, that's just how the world works. I have to deal with it. So like,
exactly.
better hire a good legal team, like contracts team, and that way the next time it happens, you say no problem, happy to do it. You know, let's get
Yeah,
started.
but you as an entrepreneur, also need to know how to pricify that to put that on your costs most of the time. And looking at the other side of the coin, there, I've had trouble as well with projects that we did on the fly to solve the customer, and we didn't have the legal protection on that. And by the end of the day, we started. We ended up take a long time to get paid, for
Ah,
example.
brutal.
So, so I understand both sides now here, but it's difficult for you to know how to navigate that. And I go for another topic that so I talk about cultures as a country, but even the minor things might have some trouble. And I give you one simple example. For us, when you say doubts here, it's not that I'm questioning what you say. It's just that I have some kind. It's not that I'm questioning your ability on what you're saying. It's that I have a question about that topic. I have something that, but in English, when you say doubts, most of the time it says that you are doubting. You don't agree. Sorry, not that you don't agree. That you don't trust on what the other person is telling you. Man, it took me like 6 months, and I always say doubts because for me that's normal. I just translated the word for him, and it took me a while. And actually, my partner in the company, he got very angry. He got some. He didn't like talking to me, and in the middle that there was someone else in the meeting, and he told me, okay, you should not say this word like that because that's what brings to their attention, their minds when you say that words. And look, it was not my intention. For me, this word here in Portuguese doesn't mean that I'm questioning his ability or his statement. That it's just that I have a question about that topic. Yeah. These kind of small things might ruin a relationship for somebody
For sure.
and even for the clients. Okay.
I had an interesting one. So I was at an event in Europe, and there was a company from Japan that we're interested in doing business with. That we've been talking to them for a while, and I bumped into a bunch of their executives, and we're all drinking, and the guy said, "Hey, did you eat yet?" And I had eaten, so I just answered the question literally, and I said, "Yeah, I've eaten."
Okay.
And they said, "Okay, we'll see you later." And they all left and went to another place. And I was talking to another friend of mine who's a Japanese salaryman, and he said, "No, when somebody asks you that, they're not literally asking if you've eaten; they're asking if you want to come hang out with them." So the correct
That's it.
answer is, "I could eat more." so, so the next time I was hanging out with a bunch of business people from Japan, I had the same question, like, "Oh, did you eat?" And I'm like, "I just ate with you," is like what I was thinking in my head, but I'm just like, I could eat more. And the guy goes, "Ah,
Yeah.
great." And so we went to another restaurant and we
That's it.
hung out. We had a great conversation, and it was good.
But that's the kind of thing we just need to learn how to navigate that. And there is no school. There is no one going to teach you that. It's just life experience. There is
100%.
no other way. There is no other way that. But these small things for me, they are the most difficult for you to bring along. And for example, uh, sometimes the treat for that country is something that you don't like. That, but it's impolite for you to say that you don't like those. That
Absolutely.
it's part of the job. There, it's part of that. Okay.
So,
I'm not a beer guy. I'm a whiskey guy. That's my goal. But when you go to Germany, they bring you the big beers for you. You cannot say no. You can drink a bit. You cannot not drink a big bottle of those, the 1 liter of those. You need to go along with that, and that's the kind of thing you need to go through. It's parts.
yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
too because I have friends that don't drink. This is one. I mean, and like I don't like to drink all the time. I mean, I don't drink when I'm by myself that much. I usually drink if I'm in a group or a social setting, or if I'm recording a
Okay.
podcast. And it's a way to interact with people. But I would say I've noticed that people I know that just don't drink at all. Like, I mean, this is gonna sound politically incorrect, but I got this from one of my friends who doesn't drink. He said you don't get the same level of access when you don't drink as when you do. And it's
Yep.
unfortunate because you shouldn't have to do something unhealthy in order to unlock, business opportunities and social interaction. But I think it's just a reality of how a lot of people interact is over a glass of alcohol. So it's.
No, I don't see that as a hardcore. So I believe you can say no to certain things,
Yeah.
but you need to come to the event because that the going to a bar sometimes is part of build a relationship. And I
Yeah.
say bar because that's a neutral environment
Yeah.
sometimes, or even someone trying to bring a treat, showing something local. That happens a lot, but that doesn't mean that you need to drink.
Yeah. That's
But
fair.
saying that I don't like to go to the bar because I don't drink. No, you can go to the bar and
You still have
get
to
a
go to the
soda
bar.
and get
Yeah.
water.
Well,
That's
or
it.
I mean, like what I actually love now is they've got a whole bunch of like non-alcoholic beers that are kind of
Yeah,
interesting. So, I mean, I'm
that's
like
it.
you. I'm more of a whiskey guy as well, but I would say that I like that. Like somebody, I was hanging out with my friend Chris Lukey the other day, who records a podcast, The Manufacturing Happy Hour, and he was drinking an athletic brew, and it's just a non-alcoholic beer. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I try that, Chris?" And he gave me a sip, and I said, "That's really really good, actually." Like that just tastes like a decent beer. So I feel like there's more and more options, that you can have if you don't want to, or nobody would ever know. Like you could also just blend in and be like, this is my drink. So
Nothing. Just go through, okay? As I said, being social is part of the things. I'm not a social guy. I don't like crowds, and I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to say that because if I can, I like to stay on my corner. But it's part of the, and I will say even say business. It's part of life. You need to go through that and learn, because you don't do just what we want to do that. And you need to go there and show that the show your face. So that show that you can be there and be there, talk to people, even if it ends a topic and something that you don't like or not too comfortable with.
oh, it's
But you can be there.
interesting too because I mean I've definitely had times when I was just having a really bad day, and I felt horrible about something, or there was some stress with a project, or something going on that it's just it's eating at me inside, and I don't necessarily want to be around people, but there's a big event, and everybody in the industry is going to be there, and so every time I've just forced myself. I'm like, no, you're going, and every
Yep.
time I've never regretted doing that. I've never like been upset that I went anyway, even though I was feeling bad going in, because I come out usually feeling better from having interacted with people.
Like
And then
that.
also, people see you there, which is important, I think, to you, like you said, to just having that
Yeah.
business presence. And
Exactly. We are not made to be alone, to be by ourselves there. Although you think sometimes you might think it might be best, but we are not meant to do that. So in pretty much any environment, it's good to have any kind of competition or collaborator, something to go through, even if it's just to get what you might miss. That it's
100%
another part
agree.
of it.
So I think we're getting to a good point to stop. I know you've got some demands on your time, as do I. As we're nearing the end of the episode, is there anything you want to plug or leave people with?
Actually, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. It was a great to have this chat with you guys, if you're here. Hope that some point come back again. Um,
Absolutely.
I would say that is the best thing that we come up with here is about there's a area coming from here. You can change. I believe that's a key point that you brought and I brought as well. So we changed the way what we used to do, the key things that we thought it were the best, but change and adapt. That's it. And you can always go through with your dreams and with your goals by the end of the day, but just don't be afraid of change.
I love that.
Orion yeah, we are here. From a far side of the world here, so in Brazil here. And if anything that's needed here, I hope to see you again soon here and that we can start growing things around this area.
Likewise. Well, Felipe, pleasure coming on, and hope to do it again soon. Thanks again.
Perfect. My pleasure here. Many thanks, Pete.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've made it this far, chances are you'll like other episodes too. Collaborative with Spencer Krause can be found on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Subscribe today to get notified when the latest episodes release and support the channel. Have an idea for a guest I should interview? Hop in the comments and let me know who that is. I'm always looking for new people to talk to, and chances are you know folks that I don't yet. Thanks for coming in, and I'll see you on the next one. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com.